Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Classic Hollywood TV. There is a specific kind of magic that exists only within the glow of a television screen. A warmth that once radiated from a very specific American living room during a time of immense cultural transition. We are journeying back to an era where the family home was more than just a sanctuary. It was a stage for a cultural debate wrapped in laughter, a place where the air was thick with the scent of home-cooked meals and the sounds of friendly yet fierce ideological clashes. In this house, liberal parents found themselves raising a conservative son, creating a microcosm of a nation in transition. This was not just a sitcom designed for easy laughs. It was a mirror held up to society, exploring identity, ambition, and the relentless speed of change that defined the 80s. But time, as we know, does not pause simply because the credits have rolled. Today, in the year 2026, we stand at a unique vantage point, looking back at the faces that once felt like our own neighbors. Some of these familiar figures remain with us, their voices still carrying the weight of decades of experience, while others have moved on to live only in the flickering light of reruns and the quiet corridors of our collective memory. Tonight, we look back at the then and the now, honoring a cast that made the concept of family feel remarkably honest, even when the world outside was growing increasingly loud and complicated. We begin our journey with a figure who represented fatherhood without an ounce of ego. He was principled, he was funny, and above all, he was deeply present in every moment of his children's lives. Michael Gross, born on June 21, 1947, was 35 years old when he stepped into the role of Stephen Keaton. He didn't just play a character, he made Stephen feel like the kind of father who truly listens, even when his heart and his history disagree with every word being said. His performance was a cornerstone of the series because he understood a vital truth. Stephen wasn't there to win a political or social argument against his eldest son. He was there to raise him into a man of character. This subtle nuance is exactly what gave the show its incredible longevity, proving to audiences that conflict does not have to be fueled by cruelty. Gross played the role with a warmth and a restraint that allowed humor to grow from human truth rather than cheap humiliation. He was the embodiment of a generation carrying the flickering spirit of the 60s into a fast-paced 80s world that was beginning to value money and status above all else. His love for his family never felt like a performance for the cameras. It felt like a daily choice, a commitment repeated even when he was exhausted by the demands of the world. After the show concluded its legendary run, Gross went on to build a remarkably steady career across film, television, and voice work, proving that true longevity is its own unique kind of stardom. Today, in 2026, Michael Gross is 79 years old. And yet, Stephen Keaton remains a classic television father, a man who was imperfect, patient, and quietly brave in a way that continues to resonate with viewers today. But as the father provided the foundation, it was the son who would provide the spark that ignited a cultural phenomenon. If Stephen Keaton was the anchor of the household, then the engine that drove the show into the stratosphere of pop culture was undoubtedly his eldest son, Alex P. Keaton. He was ambition wrapped in a crisp navy blazer, a young man who seemed to have been born with a briefcase in one hand and a Wall Street Journal in the other. When Michael J. Fox first stepped onto the set as a 21-year-old in 1982, no one could have truly predicted that he was about to create a cultural landmark that would define an entire decade. Fox did not simply play the character of Alex, he inhabited him with a frenetic, electric energy that made the character feel larger than life. His performance mattered so deeply because he refused to let Alex become a one-dimensional political punchline or a caricature of the rising corporate class. Beneath the arrogance, the sharp-tongued debates, and the unwavering conviction that the future belonged to him, there was a profound and touching vulnerability. He played Alex as a young man who was, perhaps, secretly terrified of being powerless in a changing world, using his drive for success like a suit of armor to protect himself from the uncertainties of life. The brilliance of Fox's work lay in his surgical timing. He possessed an uncanny ability to deliver fast-paced dialogue with the precision of a master marksman, yet he could simultaneously allow a tiny emotional crack to slip through the comedy. It was in those moments of hesitation, those brief flashes of doubt, or genuine affection for his family, that the audience truly fell in love with him. Even when you fundamentally disagreed with Alex's worldview, you couldn't help but root for the boy behind the bravado. The show's central magic was its ability to make these intense family conflicts funny while keeping them rooted in a recognizable reality. And Michael J. Fox was the high-revving motor that kept that balance from ever faltering. As we look at him now, in the year 2026, at the age of 65, the perspective on his career has shifted into something much more profound. His public battle with Parkinson's disease transformed him from a teen idol into one of the world's most influential and respected advocates for medical research. Rewatching Alex P. Keaton today feels different. The bright energy of the performance is still there, illuminating the screen, but the immense courage of the man behind the role has now become an inseparable part of his legacy. While Alex was busy trying to conquer the financial world from his bedroom, the Keaton household found its emotional counterweight in the middle child, Mallory. She arrived on the scene as a whirlwind of fashion, attitude, and teenage confidence, initially seemingly preoccupied with the surface level of 1980s life. However, as the seasons progressed, she evolved into something far deeper and more complex. Justine Bateman was only 16 years old when she took on the role of Mallory, and her performance was vital because she steadfastly refused to let the character remain shallow. Mallory's sweetness was often hidden behind jokes about shopping or her latest crush, but it provided the show with a necessary softness that balanced Alex's often abrasive intensity. Bateman played Mallory with a natural warmth and impeccable comedic timing, making her instantly relatable to anyone who has ever felt underestimated by their own family or peers. Her storylines often whispered a powerful truth: that intelligence is not strictly defined by academic grades or political awareness. It can be emotional, it can be social, and it can be a quiet form of resilience that holds people together when the arguments get too loud. In a house filled with constant debates and intellectual sparring, Mallory was frequently the one who carried the human heart of the family, demonstrating a kind of love that doesn't need to argue its point but simply shows up when it matters most. As the show ended, Bateman made the deliberate choice to expand her horizons far beyond the box of a teen icon, finding success as a writer, a director, and a vocal advocate for authenticity in the industry. Now, in 2026, at the age of 60, Justine Bateman stands as a reminder that the characters we might laugh at first are often the ones we come to understand and respect the most over the passage of time. The dynamic between these two siblings, the driven intellectual and the intuitive stylist, was the heartbeat of the show, but as we look closer at the world surrounding the Keatons, we begin to see the other figures who rounded out this legendary ecosystem, some of whom brought a gentleness that would eventually face its own test of time. Beyond the internal dynamics of the Keaton family, the true essence of the show's enduring legacy lies in the vibrant community that orbited their living room. A sitcom only feels like a world when the neighbors and friends who walk through the front door carry their own weight, their own stories, and their own unique brands of humanity. Perhaps no character embodied this better than the lovable, perpetually awkward neighbor, Skippy Handelman. Mark Price was only 14 years old when he first brought Skippy to life, and his performance provided the show with a necessary gentleness. Skippy wasn't just a punchline for being socially uncoordinated. He was a poignant portrait of adolescent longing. Every time he chased after Mallory's acceptance with that hopeful, slightly desperate grin, he was representing every kid who ever felt like an outsider looking in. Price played the role with such undeniable sincerity that Skippy never felt like a caricature. He was the kid who tried too hard because he desperately wanted to be seen, and that vulnerability is why audiences still remember him so fondly decades later. In the complex ecosystem of the Keaton household, he was the outsider who kept coming back, and in doing so, he made the world of the show feel like a real neighborhood where kindness mattered more than being cool. Today, in 2026, Mark Price is 58 years old, and Skippy remains a quiet heartstring in the show's history, a reminder that the sweetest characters are often the ones who simply want to belong. As the show matured, it introduced figures who challenged the Keatons' world from a different angle, not through political debate, but through emotional and artistic contrast. Enter Nick Moore, the leather jacket-wearing artist with a gentle soul. When Scott Valentine took on the role at age 27, he brought a rough-edged charm that forced Stephen and Elise to confront their own latent prejudices. Nick was the ultimate contradiction. He looked like a rebel, but he possessed a heart of gold and an artistic sensitivity that defied expectations. His presence in Mallory's life was pivotal. He wasn't just a boyfriend, he was a catalyst for her growth. He forced the family to realize that values aren't always as simple as they sound in a living room argument. Valentine played Nick with a warmth that made him instantly lovable, ensuring he was never reduced to a stereotype. By showing a young man trying to be good while living outside the traditional lines, he added a layer of emotional sophistication to the series. Now in 2026, at 68 years old, Scott Valentine's portrayal of Nick stands as proof that people are rarely just one thing, and that the most meaningful connections often happen between those who seem the most different on the surface. The expansion of the show's world also meant expanding the horizons of Alex P. Keaton. For a young man who thought he had all the answers, the arrival of women like Lauren Miller was a revelation. Courtney Cox was 23 when she joined the cast, and her performance was electric because she gave Alex exactly what he needed. A true intellectual equal. Lauren was smart, driven, and ambitious, possessing a competitive energy that could meet Alex's fire without flinching. She didn't just exist as a romantic interest. She was a personal contrast who redirected Alex's ego into something more human and grounded. Even in her limited appearances, she helped deepen the emotional vocabulary of the series, showing that a relationship could be its own form of healthy debate and mutual growth. In 2026, as Courtney Cox celebrates her 62nd year, her time as Lauren Miller remains a fascinating early chapter of a global icon's career. Marking the moment she stepped into the Keaton home and left a permanent spark behind. But perhaps the most tender chapter of the show's history was the introduction of Ellen Reed. Tracy Pollan brought a grounded, artistic, and quietly strong presence to the screen that did the unthinkable. She softened the edges of Alex P. Keaton. Ellen didn't try to defeat Alex or win his arguments, she simply understood him. Her performance was a masterclass in calm intelligence, letting a sitcom romance feel like something deeply real and remarkably sincere. The character's gentle firmness showed that softness can have its own boundaries, and that true love often demands the most growth. Of course, the story of Ellen and Alex gained an extra layer of resonance because Tracy Pollan and Michael J. Fox would eventually marry in real life, turning a television romance into one of Hollywood's most enduring and respected partnerships. In 2026, Tracy Pollan is 66, and her legacy as Ellen remains one of the show's sweetest notes, the definitive proof that even the most ambitious heart can be changed by love. Yet, every community also needs its mentors, those steady voices that offer wisdom without the weight of an argument. Gus Thompson, the friendly presence at the local station, was exactly that figure for the Keatons. John Hancock played Gus with a warmth that made him feel like a man who listened first and spoke second, adding a slower, more comforting emotional rhythm to the show's fast-paced banter. He represented the world beyond the Keaton walls, a place where a gentle word could land with more impact than a loud debate. However, rewatching Gus today carries a heavy weight of sadness. John Hancock passed away tragically in 1992 at the age of 51 due to a heart attack. His absence is a reminder of the fragility of life and the quiet tragedy of losing a voice of calm far too soon. His performance remains a testament to the importance of those secondary characters who make a family story feel like it belongs to everyone. These individuals were the architecture of the show, providing the texture and the truth that allowed the Keatons to feel like more than just a television family. They were a part of our own lives. While the main members of the Keaton family held our attention, the true depth of this world was found in the people who occupied the space just outside the central spotlight. A neighborhood is only as convincing as its residents, and the supporting cast of Family Ties provided a masterclass in the art of building a believable reality. Actors like Alan Blumenfeld, who played George Bell, brought the kind of dependable professionalism that allowed the Keaton household to feel like it existed within a real, breathing America. Blumenfeld, who is now 74 in 2026, represents the quiet backbone of the television industry, the kind of actor whose face is instantly familiar even if the name isn't always the first thing that comes to mind. His presence was a reminder that the stories we love are held together by countless professionals who make every scene feel anchored in truth. Similarly, Enid Kent, who portrayed Phyllis Evans, contributed to that everyday texture that made the sitcom's realism so effective. At 81 years old today, Kent has long since stepped away from the glare of the entertainment industry, choosing a life of privacy. Her quiet departure from the public eye feels like a fitting end to a career that was always about supporting the greater story rather than chasing the loudest accolades. Even the smallest roles, like Robert Costanzo's turn as Andrew the waiter, left a mark. Costanzo, now 84, possessed a distinct voice and an unmistakable working-class authenticity that reinforced the show's setting in an ordinary world where everyday people intersected with the Keatons' lives. These performers remind us that a legacy isn't always built on lead roles. Sometimes it's woven into the very fabric of the world we've grown to love. As we look further into the lives of those who walked through the Keaton front door, we see a recurring pattern of growth and reinvention. John Dukakis, who played the steady and sincere Jeff Wakefield, was a vital part of Mallory's journey toward maturity. He provided a portrait of young love that wasn't based on flashy gestures, but on stability and responsibility. Dukakis eventually took those qualities of leadership and focus and applied them to a career far beyond the soundstage, moving into the worlds of politics and behind-the-scenes management. In 2026, at 68 years old, his journey remains a testament to the idea that a life doesn't have to stay in one lane. Then there was David Wohl, whose character Oscar brought a unique brand of offbeat optimism and lightness to the show. Wohl, who is 72 today, understood that a sitcom needs breathing space, a moment of lightness to balance out the ideological tension. His long and steady career after the show reflects a truth often overlooked in Hollywood: that consistency and sincerity can create a different kind of wisdom. Not all of these steady hands are still with us, however. Ben Piazza, who played the authoritative Mr. Warts, and Bunny Summers, who brought quirky charm as Barbara, have both passed away, leaving behind bodies of work that remind us of the hidden structure of classic television. They were the serious adults and the quirky sparks who made the choices of the younger characters feel like they truly mattered. One of the most fascinating aspects of revisiting this series in 2026 is seeing the moments where future icons first began to glow. Long before he was a household name across the globe, Tom Hanks appeared as Ned Donnelly, a character who brought a blend of awkward sweetness and genuine kindness that would later become a hallmark of his legendary career. Hanks was only 27 at the time, but the seeds of his greatness were already visible in his timing and his ability to make a character feel immediately human. Now, at 70 years old, seeing him in those early episodes feels like catching a glimpse of a lighthouse before the rest of the world realized how far its light would reach. Similarly, Melinda Culier's portrayal of Rebecca Ryan offered a different kind of energy, a strong, ambitious woman who wouldn't shrink to fit Alex's world. At 71, her contribution to the show is remembered for the way it added a necessary layer of maturity and respect to the relationship dynamics, proving that even a short story arc could carry significant weight if played with enough conviction and grace. However, no exploration of this legacy would be complete without returning to the matriarch who held the entire house together. Meredith Baxter, as Elise Keaton, was the show's quiet strength. She was an architect, a former idealist, and a mother who led with principle rather than volume. Baxter's performance was essential because she didn't just play a mom archetype. She played a woman who worked, who worried, and who held firm boundaries while still leaving room for her family to be messy and imperfect. In the years following the show, Baxter's own life became a journey of incredible courage as she spoke openly about her personal hardships and became a powerful advocate for others. Today in 2026, at the age of 79, rewatching her as Elise feels like a return to a gentler form of authority, one built on patience and an unwavering refusal to stop loving her family, no matter how much they disagreed. And then there was the youngest, Andy Keaton, played by Brian Bonsall. Joining the show as a small, blonde child, he refreshed the family dynamic and reminded everyone that childhood absorbs everything. The love, the humor, and even the politics, long before it can fully understand them. Bonsall, now 45, eventually traded the television screen for the music stage, choosing to find his own voice away from the cameras. His presence in the later seasons serves as a reminder of how time itself arrived in the Keaton home, bringing with it the promise of a future that was always just around the corner. Together, these people built a world that wasn't just about entertainment, it was about the enduring nature of connection. The journey of the Keaton family did not end when the studio lights finally dimmed and the living room set was dismantled. Instead, the legacy of family ties transformed into something much more significant, a cultural touchstone that has managed to bridge the gap between the 20th century and our current reality in 2026. As we look at the trajectory of these performers, we see a collection of lives that mirror the very themes the show explored: resilience, adaptation, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The show was a rare kind of comfort because it dared to suggest that even in a world divided by ideology, the bonds of kinship could remain unbreakable. This central truth is what has allowed the series to remain relevant for over 4 decades, serving as a reminder that family isn't about constant agreement, but about the commitment to stay present for one another. In 2026, as we revisit these stories, we see how the actors themselves have carried this spirit into their own lives, navigating the complexities of fame, health, and aging with a grace that echoes the characters they once portrayed. Michael J. Fox, now 65, stands as the most profound example of this enduring impact. His journey from the energetic, hyper-ambitious Alex P. Keaton to a global symbol of hope and perseverance is one of the most remarkable stories in Hollywood history. By 2026, his work through the Michael J. Fox Foundation has fundamentally altered the landscape of medical research, proving that the drive he once displayed on screen could be channeled into a force for genuine, world-changing good. When we watch those early episodes today, we don't just see a young man climbing the corporate ladder. We see the early sparks of a man who would eventually face life's greatest challenges with humor and a refusal to be defeated. His legacy is no longer just about television ratings or awards. It is about the millions of lives he has touched through his advocacy and his unwavering transparency about his battle with Parkinson's. He remains a guiding light for many, showing that the energy he brought to the Keaton household was not just a performance, but a core part of his character that only deepened with time. Similarly, the parental anchors of the show, Meredith Baxter and Michael Gross, have moved into their late 70s with a dignity that reinforces the warmth they brought to Elise and Stephen. In 2026, at 79 years old, both actors are celebrated not just for their professional longevity, but for the authenticity they have maintained throughout their lives. Meredith Baxter's openness about her personal journey and her transition into new chapters of her life has made her a hero to a different generation, one that values honesty and self-discovery. Michael Gross, with his steady and diverse career, remains the quintessential example of the working actor who never lost touch with the humanity of his craft. Together, they remain the definitive television parents for a generation of viewers, representing a time when authority was built on a foundation of empathy and intellectual curiosity. Their continued presence in the industry and the public eye serves as a comforting bridge to the past, reminding us of the values that once anchored our television screens. The younger members of the cast have also found their own unique paths in the decades since the show concluded. Justine Bateman's evolution into a director and a thoughtful critic of the industry's pressures has shown that the intelligence we saw glimpses of in Mallory was very much a reflection of the woman playing her. At 60, Bateman stands as a powerful voice for creative independence and the importance of aging naturally in a world often obsessed with the superficial. Her career path has been a deliberate departure from the teen icon mold, proving that there is life and profound purpose beyond the initial burst of fame. Meanwhile, the supporting players, who made the Keaton world feel so lived in, have each left their own mark. Whether they stayed in the spotlight or chose a quieter life of privacy, their contributions remain preserved in the thousands of hours of footage that continue to find new audiences every day. In the year 2026, the world looks very different than it did in the 1980s. Yet the questions raised in the Keaton living room remain as pertinent as ever. How do we love those we disagree with? How do we maintain our principles without losing our compassion? Family Ties offered a blueprint for these struggles, wrapped in the safety of laughter and the familiarity of a shared home. Some of the performers who gave life to these questions have already taken their final bow, leaving us with a quiet sadness and a deep appreciation for the time they shared with us. Others continue to walk among us, carrying the stories of that era into the future. But the work itself endures, preserved in reruns and digital archives, waiting to be discovered by a new generation, seeking the same comfort and clarity that the show provided in its prime. It is a legacy built on the simple, radical idea that the people we live with are more important than the ideas we argue about. As we conclude this retrospective on a show that defined an era and a cast that made us feel like part of the family, we invite you to reflect on your own memories of the Keatons. The laughter might be decades old, but the truth behind it remains as fresh as it was the day the first episode aired. If this tribute to the cast and the world they created stayed with you, please consider showing your support. Like, subscribe, and join the conversation in the comments below. Tell us which member of the Keaton household you will always remember most and how their story influenced your own. The living room may be empty now, the cameras may be off, and the year 2026 may have brought many changes, but the heart of Family Ties beat with a rhythm that will never truly fade. Thank you for joining us for this look back at the then and now. This has been a presentation from Classic Hollywood TV, keeping the legends alive for every news banner. Family Ties, Then and Now 2026, the revelation of a Hollywood legacy 44 years later.